welcome to the Extra Mile. I'm Linda Boudreau. Our guest today is Ralph Peters. Ralph is the Executive Director of FVIP, which is the Family Violence Intervention Program, and we're going to find out about what that is today. So Ralph, welcome.
Hi, Linda. Thank you for having us.
Well, it's so good to have you here today. And, you know, I'm not sure that everyone in Lafayette and Acadiana knows what FVIP is. So could you start just by telling us about the agency and the history?
The agency started in the late 80s, as you well know. You were one of the original board members, as was I. When we began to look at the domestic violence program in Lafayette to see why we were having as much violence as we were having, Faith House got involved, judges, police department, the sheriff's office, the school board, some private practitioners. We all came together, and we realized quickly that there was no treatment or no programs available for the batterers, for the perpetrators of domestic violence.
The people that are doing the hitting.
People that are doing the hitting.
Yeah.
We had lots of services for women who were being hit, and unfortunately men also, but there are not very many of those. And the children got services, but there was nothing provided to help men stop the violence.
So Ralph, do you think that men can be taught to stop?
I think that men can learn how to live in nonviolent relationships. I think that the statistics and the research is showing that batterer intervention programs are making a difference across the nation and have been making a difference for many years. Looking at our program, we run about a 5% recidivism rate, defining recidivism as people who come back through our program.
That's an amazingly low recidivism rate, don't you think?
And that is.
Because this is really the criminal justice system we're talking about.
Right.
You know.
Our program deals with men and women who are convicted of crimes, misdemeanor crimes of domestic violence. The overwhelming majority of our clients come from Lafayette City Court, and we have some or a substantial number that come from Lafayette District Court. Plus we have several that come from family court when protective orders are issued. And then we have some referrals from Department of Children and Family Services.
Okay, so referrals can come from lots of different places. Can people also, could like an individual say, I think I have anger problems, or I think that I'm, you know, really wanting to hurt my partner. Can I volunteer to go to FVIP? Can they do that?
Sure, and we've had some volunteers come through in the past. That, as a matter of fact, one of our volunteers came through and went on to go to work at another batterers intervention program up north.
That's great. So it takes a lot of self-awareness, but people can acknowledge a problem and do something about it.
That's correct. Volunteers come. We've had several start. Of course, we charge for the program, so a lot start and don't finish. But those that are sent by the court generally finish, or they end up in jail.
That's a motivator.
That's a good motivator.
I kind of got you off track a minute ago, but in terms of just the development of FVIP, did the group like pick a particular model, or did we just make something up, or how did we come up with the program that we're going to offer?
After looking across America, we found there were 3 frequently used models of batterer intervention. The most frequently used and the biggest program was the Duluth model, strangely enough developed in Duluth, Minnesota. And we kind of bought into that model. And the early board of directors, which you and I were both on, sent a local young lady and a co-worker of hers to Duluth to be trained in that, and thank God the company she worked for, the mental health hospital that she worked for, footed the bill for that.
Which was wonderful.
Do you
because
remember that?
Yeah, I do. Vermillion Hospital, that launched it.
That's correct, that
launched
launched it. And that's where our first classes were.
Yeah.
We had no staff. As a matter of fact, the paralegal in the city prosecutor's office, Ms. Schurhoff, and myself were the first staff. We were all board members. We managed to sign up all the people in city court until we had enough people coming in and paying for the classes. And I believe the first year Melanie Schuerhoff and and I forget his name, the young man that was the other facilitator, didn't get paid for facilitating those classes until we had enough money, fees being generated to afford to pay for them. And then we got some grants. We got an external agency grant. We got some United Way funds. Then we were able to hire a first part-time director, then a full-time director. And we have evolved into the program we are today, where we're dealing with about 150 clients at any one given time.
So that's a lot of people getting arrested for domestic violence.
That's a lot of people getting arrested for domestic violence.
When we talk about domestic violence, Ralph, what are we talking about?
We're talking about violence in an intimate partner relationship. Statistically speaking, 85% of the time that is a male perpetrator and a female victim. That's what the uniform crime reports are telling us. It's about that. And the rest are same-sex relationships and about 5% female perpetrator and male victims. Very low percentage of female perpetrator.
When you talk about it, when you put it in those terms, then you're defining perpetrator very specifically.
As the person who commits the violence, who is the...
What if they both hit?
Predominant aggressor.
Okay.
Well, unfortunately, that happens, and that happens a lot. The law and the police are trained to investigate, and the law requires them to identify the predominant aggressor. The person who hit first may not be the predominant aggressor. And many times, women hit first because they know what's coming.
They get
from their
lick
experience.
In, huh?
They get their lick in first because they know whatever they said or did is going to trigger the predominant aggressor to become violent, that being the male partner.
So would you say that when women hit first like that, it's more of a defensive effort, or is it just kind of, I'm just going to get you because I can while I can?
Generally, it's more of a defensive effort, but unfortunately, all too often, both end up being arrested and both come through our program. When we identify a female perpetrator as a true victim, we have arrangements with the battered women's program. We send them there.
Good, good. Because I hate to see us re-victimize a victim, you know.
I hate to see us re-victimize the victim. Yeah. And although our women's program is slightly different than the men's program, we do have a women's program, and it's currently the biggest group that we have. We have over 25 women in it.
But we only have one women's program, and we have a bunch of men's programs.
We have one women's class, and we have 7 men's classes. So
listen up, Lafayette. If you hit your partner, we might be seeing you at FVIP. People are pretty much getting arrested for this. I guess we want to say to folks, it is a crime.
It is a crime, and I started tracking arrests beginning this year. Today is day 121 of the year, and we've had 170 arrests on domestic violence, misdemeanor arrests on domestic violence.
Wow.
So we're averaging more than one a day. As a matter of fact, yesterday there were 5 arrests.
Yes, it was a very busy day. So those are the ones that are getting arrested, but I bet you there are a whole lot that are hitting and abusing that are not getting arrested.
That are not, the police are not being called on. That's absolutely correct.
Would it be to a victim's benefit, you think, to be familiar with programs like FVIP and try to get some help for their partners? Or do you think, okay.
Yes, it is. I got to say, City Court has been very, very, very good in that 95% of the people that go through City Court that are charged with and plead to a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, and many that the charge is reduced, are sent as a condition of probation rather than jail. So we, in effect, free up jail beds for more serious offenders. And we, in effect, FVIP, serve as probation officers for City Court. You didn't know that, did you, Linda? You were a probation officer.
No, I didn't, but it's just another thing on my resume. But it is a diversion program, and I think part of what I really like about it, aside from the fact that it does those things, is that it really gives people an opportunity to assess and evaluate the way they're living their lives and to make some significant changes.
That's correct.
And they can do it.
And I got to say, every graduate that finishes the program fills out a form, and the forms have almost all said that they have learned as much from their classmates as they had from the facilitators. They generally say the first few weeks they're there that they're mad and they don't want to be there, and they blame their partner for getting them there. And then they start listening, and they hear these other guys and the newer guys coming in, and they say, well, gee, sounds like me.
That's what
and then
group
they begin
is.
to realize
Yeah.
that they have a problem and begin listening to what's going on. That's why the program is 26 weeks long.
Yeah, and that's why group work works sometimes.
And that's why group work works sometimes.
Now, this particular model that we use looks at domestic violence or domestic abuse as more than just hitting. So, what is kind of the subsets of domestic violence as we see it with FVIP?
Well, we have 10 themes that we teach, that we deal with during the 26-week program. And it has to do with, I mean, it's all about power and control, but it has to do with things like respect, fairness, negotiation, economic abuse, verbal abuse, and even using physical abuse are all covered during the 26 weeks. And we even talk about sex.
That's right, sexual abuse.
Sexual abuse in there. I think many men are surprised to learn that some of the things they're doing are abusive.
That's why I wanted to bring this up, because a lot of times people think abuse is if I hit you. But you know, if you've called her names and put her down and destroyed her self-esteem, then she can't really fight back anyway. And so that is another form of abuse. Would you agree with that?
That's correct. Isolation is frequently used as a technique of abuse where the abuser separates her from support systems. And I don't want to sound like a sexist. As I said earlier, about 85% of the time, the her is the victim and the he is the perpetrator, the hitter, as it were, the person who is charged with and convicted of using the violence. But very frequently, they don't realize what they're doing, and they do it, the isolation tactics they use. You don't need to go see your mama. Why do you need to go see your mama? I provide everything for you.
That's right. Your mama doesn't like me anyway, you know?
Yeah, your mama don't like me. She never has liked me. She
Yeah.
don't want you to marry me. Every time you go see her, she wants you to leave me. And why you want to go out with them women?
That's right.
They just going out looking for men. Why you want to do that? You don't need to go out with those women. I'll take you out when you need to go out. So they remove whatever support systems the victim has, and unfortunately, that's an easy way of forcing them into staying in a battering relationship.
And that kind of comes up or addresses the other question, why do women stay or why do victims stay? And there are tons of reasons, but some of them are because they have been beaten down to the point where they don't even have the energy or wherewithal to leave anymore.
I had a former director of the Faith House program here say she had a victim that told her that it was like walking in a house where 50-pound sandbags were suspended from the ceiling. You never knew when one was going to fall. So you had to watch out all the time.
It's scary.
So
the model that we use with all the topics is based on power and control.
Correct. Domestic abuse is not about anger. It's not about rage out of control. If it were, these perpetrators of domestic violence would be also arrested for hitting their hunting buddies when they shot the deer, or hitting their bowling buddies when they had the better game, or hitting their boss when their boss told them something they didn't like. But that never happens. They're rarely happens.
They're nice guys to everybody else.
Nice guys. And they're nice guys to their spouses sometimes. Another reason why the women stay.
Right, because they like them sometimes. Yeah.
They love them.
Yeah, they really do love them a lot of the time.
They love them. Their religious beliefs frequently say, God doesn't like divorce in the book of Malachi. But all too many men who use that verse don't read the rest of it. But he likes even less men who clothe themselves in violence. Is the next phrase in that verse.
That verse may not be quite so, or that phrase may not be quite so self-serving as the first part of it. Is that true? So if somebody, and I'm really thinking about our audience, people that are watching, some of this may resonate. Women or victims may think, wait, I didn't know that that was abuse, but it just didn't feel right. Or perpetrators may think, I have a problem. Maybe I can do something about that. If they wanted more information, if they wanted to know how to access some of this, what would they have to do?
They could call us at 232-2440 at the Family Violence Intervention Program. We'll be happy to sit with them and talk to them and tell them what our program is all about, and if they're interested in coming through, we can certainly sign them up. Just want to understand that there are fees that are associated with this. They have to pay for these classes because it costs to put them on. And
well, I'll tell you what, and I say this all the time, it's the best deal in town. If you're going to go to therapy, it would cost you a whole lot more, and you might not get quite the same thing out of it.
It is, and I've seen some sliding fee scales. Everybody wants to know, why don't we have sliding fee scales? Well, the 3 places that I've looked at sliding fee scales, they all start in the $20 to $25 range for classes, and guess what we charge?
What do we charge?
$25 a class.
So we're at the lower end.
We're at the lower end anyway.
Yeah,
and it doesn't cover all our expenses.
No.
We can't survive without some grant money. It's expensive to run a program like that.
It is.
I got to tell you, insurance and auditor fees run us about $20 grand a year.
Which is no small chump change.
No small chump change. And I mean, we have a huge staff. We have 1.6 employees.
Gee, you're flaunting it, huh? Let me ask you this about, we talk about the adults in a domestic violence situation, but what about kids? What effect does domestic violence have on children?
We talk about kids and parenting skills in the classes, and it surprises me to hear the number of perpetrators that believe that their children don't witness this. And if the child is in the home, he knows, or she knows, the child knows, that mom and dad fight. That child knows that dad hits mom. Children are dramatically affected by domestic violence. It causes them to act out in school. Their homework suffers very frequently. They want to go to a safe place when the argument starts because they know what's next. I like to tell the story when I train police officers around the state about the officer in Monticello, Arkansas, who was searching the house for a child that he knew was home. When the fight started, he had arrested the father, and other officer was interviewing the mother downstairs. He went upstairs and checked the bedroom, and when he opened the closet in the bedroom, he got greeted by a blast of a .410 shotgun in his face because Junior thought Dad was coming for him.
Oh.
Because statistically, children who live in abusive homes are, I think the statistic says, 2/3 more likely to be a victim of abuse also. The shooting incident earlier this year in suburban Cleveland, Ohio, the school shooting where a young teenage boy took his guns to school, had several guns, and shot several people, and then I believe he killed himself.
Yeah.
His parents, I vividly remember this graphic on TV. His parents were involved repeatedly in domestic violence as they showed court documents, protective orders on the screen. So there is a very definite causal connection between domestic violence in the home and bullying. This child was a victim of bullies, not a bully.
They can go either way. Children can become either perpetrators or victims depending on how they're wired.
Exactly. The research clearly shows a relationship between bullying, the children who are bullies, and living in homes where violence is prevalent. I read, when I went back to college, in a study done by the Pennsylvania Coalition of Domestic Violence, that 85% of the inmates, when they did the study in the Pennsylvania prison system, admitted to growing up in homes where domestic violence occurred. That's a scary number. 85% of people in prison said they grew up in homes where domestic violence occurred regularly.
It sounds like there's a correlation to me, you know?
That sounds pretty connected.
Yeah,
You're right.
yeah.
Can't ignore that kind of research. And in that same study, they also showed, we talked a minute ago about why women stay. They were able to interview, I think it was about 1,800 women who got out of abusive relationships, and the average woman left more than 7 times, 7 point whatever, I don't remember the decimal, before she stayed gone.
So it's not easy to get out of those relationships.
Leaving an abusive relationship is a process. It is not a response to a single incident. The victim has to figure out where she's going to go, what she's going to do, how she's going to support herself, where she's going to live. Sure, she can go to a shelter and stay there for 45 days. But what if my roommate in the shelter is hooked on crack? And what if her 13-year-old son starts pushing my 10-year-old daughter around? Living in a shelter is not the nicest thing in the world.
No, it's not. It's not easy.
And, you know, we have a wonderful shelter here with Faith House, and we work very well with those wonderful ladies at Faith House. But living in a shelter is not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not.
So those women, many of them are economically dependent on the men because the perpetrators would not let them work. Or if they worked, they quickly got fired because the man showed up and pestered them and made them miss work and bothered them, and harassed them and stalked them at work. And just about every mother knows that a child has greater chances of success in a 2-parent family than in a 1-parent family. But I think that the biggest reason that women stay, like I like to tell those policemen, and the number one reason she stays is fear.
Yeah.
Because I don't like to say always or never, but I got to believe that in almost every domestic violence relationship, the perpetrator threatens the victim. If she leaves, he's going to kill her. So
And sometimes
if
he
she
does.
leaves, he can no longer control her. And all too often, we see the reports in the news. Women are killed on the courthouse steps when they're going in to get a protective order, when they're going in to testify at the trial of the man that got arrested, or when they're going in for the divorce.
It's a dangerous time. It's a
dangerous
very
time.
dangerous time. And domestic violence is nothing to take lightly. For people watching, if they are aware of domestic violence or suspect domestic violence, say a mother and her child, thinks her daughter may be in an abusive relationship, or a friend may know something's going on, should they say something?
They should say something. They should get that person or themselves to call Faith House. And I want to give them a plug because they really do a great job.
Wonderful.
232-8954 is their 24-hour line. And there is always a woman who cares who will answer that phone.
And this is about saving lives.
This is about saving lives.
In the most dire moments, and about improving the quality of life no matter what.
Correct.
Would you agree?
I agree. Living in a violent relationship is no way to live, no way to raise a child. Louisiana leads the nation and has been, since I've been in the domestic violence field for 25 years, 30 years now.
Time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It does.
Louisiana, since they've kept these records, has been in the top 5 in the number of states, in the states of women who are killed by their intimate partner.
And what a betrayal, huh?
What a betrayal.
So, in the last 30 seconds or so that we have, again, just briefly, when we're talking about domestic violence and we're talking about a group of behaviors, it's not just hitting.
It is a pattern of behavior that continues over time. It's not a one-time incident. Of course, every guy we got says it's a one-time incident.
Yeah, I got arrested my first time. Like, whoa, how lucky are you?
It's not a one-time incident. It is a pattern of behavior. It rarely starts out with violence. It generally starts out with verbal and moves to economic and social and isolation, and then in the physical abuse and sexual abuse.
Okay.
But it continues over time, and it gets worse without some type of intervention, hence the name intervention in our title.
And intervention works, people can get help, people can change.
Correct.
Okay, so there's hope. So if you know of anybody that you think might be a victim of domestic violence, or if you think you might have a problem, give Ralph a call and get some help, because you can change, things can be better. Ralph, thank you for being here today.
Linda, thank you for having us, and thank you for all you do with our program.
Thank you. And thank you for watching The Extra Mile. Done deal. Good job.
Well, so this was live on the internet?
I think so.
Whoopee.